Tarkov is a survival shooter where any one moment can be your last, so going into raids with the right knowledge is very important. If you are watching this video right now, you are probably new to Escape From Tarkov, and to that I say welcome. You've come to the right place because in this video I will explain everything you need to know to get right into a raid and start having fun. The first decision you'll make when starting a game is whether you want to play as a bear or Usec PMC. Depending on which character you pick, there are a few minor starting loadout differences and clothing options, but the main difference at the moment is only really notable on the map Lighthouse, where bears have a harder time dealing with the rogues, an elite AI we'll talk about later in this video. Make sure you are happy with your character selection here, as this decision cannot be changed until the game wipes, which is normally every 6 months or so. This game is played in wipe cycles similar to Rust or DayZ, where everyone gets reset after some time to start anew. After selecting your character, it's a good idea to head to your inventory screen, which is where you'll spend a lot of time gearing up your PMC. Now you may notice a bunch of tabs on the top left, but thankfully they aren't that complicated. The overall tab shows you your overall stats in Tarkov for the current wipe, with the only exception being the hours metric, which is accurate to your total playtime. The medical tab shows your current PMC health, as sometimes you can leave a raid pretty banged up, and you may find yourself healing after the raid is over, though we'll go more in depth on the medical system shortly. The skills tab shows you your PMC skills, which accumulate while you're raiding, but again, we'll talk more about this in depth soon. The maps tab can safely be ignored, as it really serves no purpose in my opinion, but the task tab is very important, as it shows you your current quests. Quests are the main benchmark for progressing your character, so you will want to pay attention to what quests you have. Finally, we return back to the gear tab, which again is just your inventory. In this stash here, you can use these buttons on the side to sort your stash by items you may be looking for. If I click the medical tab, it will highlight the medical items and it will dim the other items. The buttons on the bottom here are also very important, as this boxy one here gives you a sorting table to sort things around your stash, so you can move things around how you want it to. And the button on the bottom here is an automatic sort, so when you click it, it organizes your stash for you. You can also do this inside of containers by clicking the sort button next to the close icon. While we're here, I also want to talk about the numbers you see on the bottom left. The first number you see on the left is your weight, and once it goes yellow like this, that means you are overweight. When you're overweight, you have decreased stamina regeneration and movement speed. However, you only really start to notice this above 35 kilograms, but again, in a game where you're constantly looting and wearing armor, it seems like you're almost overweight almost all the time. Just watch out when you get above 40 kg, that's when things really start to slow down. The second number in green there is your health pool. The more, the better. The two numbers beside it are your hydration and your energy levels. Now, it's important to make sure that you're constantly eating and drinking, because as soon as you run out of hydration or energy, you'll start to take damage, and you do not want that. It can kill you pretty quickly, so make sure when you're on your raids, you start packing some food and water with you. Now that we are comfortable with our inventory screen, it's time to talk loadouts. The two most important pieces to a loadout in Tarkov is the ammo you are firing and the armor you are wearing. Every armor piece has an armor value ranging from 1 to 6, 6 being the best, and every type of bullet in Escape From Tarkov has a penetration value and a damage value. To make things simple, every 10 penetration a bullet has, it can pierce through one armor class, meaning a bullet with 45 penetration will pierce through a tier 4 and below pretty easily. But you may have to land a few shots to get through tier 5 and 6 armor. Currently, there is no way in game to see how much damage or penetration a bullet has. You just have to search for the ammo charts online, and thankfully they are very easy to find. Plus, I've added a link for this in the description. My philosophy is to wear the best armor I have available, as it will save you from time to time. And as far as the weapon systems go, I tend to stick to the higher calibers for some armor penetration, but that's just my preference. Headshots are always lethal at the end of the day, no matter which bullet you fire, unless your target has a armored helmet and visor, of course. On screen now are some starter loadout options that can help you through the early game until you hit level 15, which then you get access to the flea market, which is a player run market where you can purchase most equipment. Now, just before we get onto the medical system, I also quickly want to mention your pouch slot. Your pouch slot is your secure container, meaning anything in there is kept even if you die in a raid. Typically, players will put ammo, meds, or any keys they find there. Just note that a lot of quest items will require the find in raid tag to hand in, and you lose that tag on items if you die, meaning a quest item in the secure container will only count if you survive the raid. I also want to quickly mention the insurance screen. Just before you get into a raid, you'll see this screen which will let you insure your items. This means if you die, there's a chance you can get your insured items back if they haven't been picked up by other players or scavs. With the most recent patch letting scavs loot players, it kind of nerfs insurance, especially for solo players, so it's up to you if you think insurance is worth it. Okay, now it's time to talk about the medical system, and Tarkov has a pretty intricate one. Each major part of your body has its own HP pool, so getting shot in the left arm will do damage to your left arm. Once a limb takes more damage than the amount of health it has, it will become blacked out, which depending on the limb has certain penalties. If you lose an arm, your aim becomes shaky and inaccurate. If you lose a leg, you can no longer run or walk and instead will have to limp unless you are on painkillers. When your stomach gets shot out, you'll start losing your hydration and energy values rather quickly, so it's a good idea to fix the injury as soon as possible, as you can and will starve to death. And losing your head or thorax will kill you instantly unless you lose these limbs to bleed damage, which I'm fairly sure is bugged, which is why armor can be so important. If you get shot in an already blacked out limb, the damage can spread to other body parts, which is why you want to fix these as soon as you can. A blacked limb can only be fixed with a surgery kit, so make sure you have these on you when you raid, as these get used often. When taking damage, there's also two different bleeds you can accumulate, being a light or heavy bleed, which will damage your body over time. It's best to use specific bandages to heal these bleeds, like the Armory bandage for light bleeds or the Catalog B for heavy bleeds, because if you heal bleeds with a regular med kit of some kind, you'll use a substantial amount of charges from it. The last status effect you can accumulate is a fracture, which can be fixed using a splint, the 15-use surgery kit, or a grizzly medkit. A fracture behaves the same way a blacked out limb does, in that if you have a fractured arm, you'll have an aim penalty, or a fractured leg will slow you down. Although that complicated stuff out of the way, most of the medkits in the game work the same way. They heal your body where 1 damage point equals 1 charge from the medkit, unless you are fixing a bleed or fracture, as I've stated before. It's a good idea to right-click and inspect a medical item if you aren't familiar with it, as it will tell you exactly what it does. It's important to have all your medical bases covered when raiding, as the last thing you want is to slowly bleed out with a quest item on hand with nothing you can do about it. Now that we hopefully understand the medical system a little bit better, it's time to talk about progression through the trader and task system. The traders is where you'll buy most of your gear, and each one comes with a reputation value and money spent value, which you can see in the top right in the trader UI. Buying and selling items to a trader will affect the money spent value, and the quests are how you increase your rep with a specific trader, as each trader will have quests for you to do throughout the game. The max trader level is level 4, and this will allow you to buy most of the items in the game for a much better price than the flea market. So it's a very solid goal to work towards, as each tier of trader will unlock more gear. Sometimes quests themselves will unlock specific item rewards, meaning even if you have level 4 traders, you still won't be able to buy every item unless you do the quests that unlock specific gear. The only exception to this is Fence, which works completely different than the other traders. Fence sells whatever gear players sell to him or unclaimed insurance items. The only way to increase rep on Fence is through your Scav, which is a randomly generated loadout that you can use for free off cooldown. More on that though in a minute. Traders will pay a different price for different items, and a quick breakdown of how to get the most value out of the traders is this. Therapists will pay the most for medical items and valuables like gold items or hideout supplies. Mechanic will pay the most for weapons and weapon parts. Peacekeeper will pay the most for intel related items. Jaeger will pay as much as Therapist for some medical items and hunting gear. Skier and Propper will buy combat items for a tad less than Mechanic, and Fence will buy everything but for the least value, even completely ruined gear. Now I know that I mentioned hideout supplies, so let's talk a little bit about the hideout. The hideout can be accessed from the main menu, and you'll want to upgrade the facilities found there as you play through the game. If you have the standard edition of the game and suffer from the smaller stash base, you can find your stash upgrade module here, which will help you store many more items. You can also build facilities like the workbench, which will allow you to make weapon presets when you inevitably get into weapon modding, a feature the game is known for. Other bonuses include a med station for med crafting, a gym to level up endurance and strength, a Bitcoin farm for money, and lastly I want to shout out the workbench one more time, as the tier 2 and 3 workbench will provide good ammo crafts in the late game. So some modules have to be upgraded more than one time. Now I know this is a lot of information, so hopefully you have a pristine cup of coffee with you, as it's time to talk about your PMC versus your Scav. Anytime you go to enter a raid, you can use your PMC and your gear or your Scav. If you select your PMC, you'll enter a raid as normal, but your Scav plays a bit differently. Your Scav enters a raid that has already started, and the main purpose of your Scav is to loot what's left on the map, like dead players or any items that haven't been picked up, or to fight PMCs with your Scav brethren. You are friendly to other AI Scavs around the map, and it's implied that you should be friendly towards other player Scavs that you see as well. Every Scav raid you extract from will give you more rep towards fence, and as you level up your rep further, your Scav will start to spawn with better gear, have a shorter cooldown, and if you manage to reach 6.0 Scav Karma and above, you'll even become friendly with the elite AI like Scav bosses, which would normally shoot you as a Scav. Anytime you kill a Scav or a Scav boss as a Scav, you will take a significant penalty to your Scav Karma, so it's not recommended you do this unless you love the chaos. However, if you kill another Scav that's gone rogue or a PMC as a Scav, you will earn a slight bonus to your fence rep, even if you don't survive the raid. Another thing that your Scav has that I find quite interesting is the fact that your Scav actually has skills. Like your PMC, your Scav will level its skills while you're doing Scav raids, and even though you get a different Scav every time, you still keep the skills when you play your Scav. And speaking of skills, let's talk a little bit more about the skills tab. You can hover your mouse over each of the skills to see what bonuses you get from leveling them, but the most impactful ones are your strength and endurance. A higher endurance will allow you to run longer and recharge stamina faster, and a higher strength will allow you to run and walk faster and jump higher. Some skills are required for quests, like the sniper skill, so it could be a good idea to use a sniper early to level this skill, but for the most part you should get your skills naturally. The skill leveling in raid has diminishing returns, meaning you can't just power level your skills in raid, as there is a heavy XP drop off once you've earned enough skill points in that skill. The diminishing returns timer is 5 minutes, so let's say you have it eaten in 5 minutes. When you do eat your food, you will gain more XP than normal for that short period of time. Speaking of in raid, these last 3 topics are going to help you while you're actually raiding. We are done with all the technical stuff that the game menu brings, starting with maps and extraction. Currently there are 9 maps in Escape From Tarkov, and as a new player this can seem a bit overwhelming. My best advice would be to focus on 1 or 2 maps you like and learn how to fight and loot on those. I learned this game playing Interchange because I really enjoy indoor combat and there's good tech loot for you to find. There is an offline mode, even with settings you can configure, that will allow you to play any of these maps in a vacuum so you can learn them. You can do things like enable bosses or turn off Scavs completely so you can explore the map safely. No items will be gained or lost with offline mode, so feel free to have some fun with it. Another great thing offline mode is good for is learning the extracts on the map. To leave a raid and survive with your hard-earned loot, you have to head to an extraction zone, which will always be across the map from where you spawn. I would at the very least learn a map's extractions before you go to it, otherwise you won't know how to exit the raid. I speak from experience there. When Streets came out, I just played it and died a few times because I didn't know how to leave. It's a good idea to have the game maps on another monitor or maybe your phone to reference while you're still learning where everything is, and I'll have a link to the game maps in the description to help you guys out there as well. Depending on what map you are playing, you may come across elite enemies such as Scav bosses, the goons, rogues, and raiders. These enemies are extremely dangerous, and until the AI rework happens, you need to be very careful when fighting them. Most of these enemies have aimbot-like aim, little reaction time, and extremely far aggro ranges, meaning most long-range firefights with them will probably result in your death. Because of this, players typically use cheesy strats to fight them, like holding doorways or short-range angles, or sniping them in specific locations where they know they are safe. The AI in Tarkov definitely needs some work, and if you are playing on a map where elite enemies spawn, it's good to know where these spawns are so you don't catch a bullet seemingly from nowhere. A good example of this are the rogues or the Scav boss that can spawn at Skeletal on Customs. If you are walking around there and die from nowhere, that's probably because the boss spawned. Just ask the players of Tarkov. Pretty much all of us have been one-tapped by one of these elite enemies from Mars. They seemingly have homing bullet technology that we just don't possess yet. Before I send you off to the dangerous lands of Tarkov, I also quickly wanted to talk about money making. Now, I do have a bunch of money making guides on my channel, but there are a few tips I would like to share here. If money is your goal, Streets of Tarkov and Lighthouse are currently the most densely populated maps in terms of loot. In Tarkov, a lot of the valuable loot are small gold items, hideout materials, and military tech items. In the description, I've added a dynamic item value list that will break down what is profitable and what isn't. Items need the find and raid tag to be sold on the flea market, so engaging in PvP isn't as profitable as one may think because the items you get off players, like armor and a gun, will not be found in raid and instead will have to be sold to the traders for significantly less value. I'm hoping this has changed in the future, but this is just the way it works now. Currently, the flea market is where most of your money will come from. Meta weapon attachments and quest items people will need sell for good value, so it's good to check the flea market before you sell an item you're not familiar with to the traders because the item price may surprise you. Well, that's just about it for this beginner guide. Hopefully I was able to help you out and get you started on Escape from Tarkov. If you want to level up your skills in Tarkov even further, I have a 200 tip guide where you can learn very detailed tips about Escape from Tarkov. Let me know if this guide helped you in the comments, and good luck out there. I hope you have great raids, and I'll see you in the next one.